Welcome back to Lockhorn's Banger TV's weekly metal debate show. For those of you who are joining us in the archive, a reminder, this is a live stream show that airs every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. For those of you that haven't done so already, please subscribe to Banger TV. We crossed the 50K threshold last week, and now we're gunning it for 100K. All right, this week, you wanted the worst, you got the worst, you guys asked for this one. We're doing new metal, and to help me with this discussion is journalist, author, and host of the fantastic YouTube show This Exists, Sam Sutherland. Welcome back, sir.
Sam, thank you so much for having me and for doing the requisite Limp Bizkit intro that I specially requested. Yeah.
I stole that. Well, you can do the Drayman scream.
I'll
later.
Drayman out.
Yeah.
Like, that'll be sort of how we'll bookend things.
You do that.
But did it stick in your mouth to have to say those words?
It was painful,
those
but I got through.
tones,
Yeah, 99 came rushing back. Good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Last time you were here, you know, it was in early days before the new board, the whole new setup. We did mathcore. What have you been up to?
Just hanging out, watching a lot of Metal Evolution, the new metal episode, to stoke my anger, to prepare for this battle. Like a fighter who's been beaten down, just sitting, studying tape, learning your moves, ready to knock you out.
Well, you got to dodge and weave today because it's going to get feisty. But full disclosure, you're kind of a fan of new metal. What do you see in this music?
Well, first of all, you say that like it's like full disclosure. You are a criminal who can't actually offer legal advice to anyone because you've been to jail.
That's true.
Time
to reveal yourself.
Yeah, time to reveal myself. So what I love about new metal is probably what anyone who's watching who's not a hater loves about new metal, which is that I heard it early on. Korn came out when I was a kid and just getting into music, and so to me, this is like formative metal in the same way that like Blink-182 got me into punk, and people love to make fun of them, but also a ripping band, guys. We can save that for.
One thing you can be sure of is there's always going to be older, grumpier guys around to tell you that you got it all
Well,
wrong.
the great thing is now I listen to stuff like, in preparing for this episode, I was like, okay, so what's going on with the new metal influence bands today? And like, spoiler alert, I was like, don't like this. And I was like, oh no, I've turned into Sam Dunn.
Turned into that guy. Sorry about that.
Exactly, yeah.
But you know what? Some might say that this is just, why are we talking about new metal? But we might argue there's a bit of a resurgence going on. Where is new metal now?
Right. I mean, I think that argument can be made, fairly strongly, and I think that's why it's relevant and sort of worth talking about. We're going to see a lot of people saying this was just a flash in the pan and it should be stricken from the entire family tree. But I think, tragically or not, the sort of tendrils of these bands exist in a lot of contemporary hardcore, contemporary metal. We hear Deftones in a lot of stuff. We hear Korn in a lot of stuff. I'm sorry to say it, we hear a lot of Limp Bizkit in 2016. And I think, these bands retain relevance. I mean, Korn isn't playing country fairs. Like, Korn is playing arenas and they're headlining amphitheaters.
That's right, and Limp Bizkit is back out there, and one might argue, it's almost with every generation of not just metal, but almost every form of music that it seems to be a product of a certain time, but lo and behold, it never really goes away or it rears its ugly head again.
It's like herpes, I guess. That's the one that stays with you forever, right? Who knows here?
Okay, new metal is like herpes.
Anyone know?
Most quotable quote.
I know. I want to say that no one on the Banger TV team pretended to know what I was talking about there. Everyone looked down. Oh no.
What I do want to fully address is this man is wearing a Toronto's Blue Jays hat, so at various moments throughout this telecast, as they used to say, we will be checking in on the Indians Blue Jays score. Why? Because we're Toronto fans and we care. Go Jays. Okay, but as we know, this show is not about us, it's about everyone out there. We want to hear what you have to say about new metal. We know this is a highly divisive genre within heavy metal music. It's sparked a lot of debate for a long time, and I want to give a shout out to everyone that's joining us today. We've got Florida, Kentucky, Philly, San Antonio, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba, Denmark, Sweden, Austria, Malaysia, where it's 5 a.m. Woo! Thanks for getting up for this. And Mexico. So we do have an international
Sorry, I
audience.
just want to say I think you've really betrayed your age by saying you stayed up. Like, you woke up at 5 a.m. as opposed to you stayed up till 5 a.m.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, full disclosure, I'm old. Anyway, what we want to know, of course, is not just, dude, my favorite nu metal band. We actually want to hear what you have to say. Why you think a band needs to be added, removed. We want to hear the basis for opinions. And to help us mediate, adjudicate, officiate all of this nonsense is Lisa Ladisseur. Hello,
Hey,
Lisa.
everyone. I know nothing about herpes. That's why I said nothing. I'm not going
Your
there.
eyes were glued
I'm
to
not
the
going
computer.
there.
Yeah,
There
that
was an awkward silence.
Yeah.
There was.
Yeah.
There was.
But anyway, she loves this sound because
I do.
that means she's running the show, and we're going to work on getting the For Whom the
I
Bell
know.
Tolls
I know. We're gonna
bell
get it going.
for
We'll get it
next
going.
time because that bell is not metal.
No.
Yeah, not really.
Okay.
Extreme library vibes.
Come on, it's a little bit power metal. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit Spinal Tap, actually, just like
Yeah.
Stonehenge. Anyway, let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
We like to lay some groundwork
I think it's
for each
important.
genre
Yeah.
and ask the very fundamental question, what is nu metal? Help me out.
So,
with this.
I mean, nu metal, as we all know, is about pants. It's 100% about the width of your pants. People will say baggy, but what they don't realize is that Jinkos didn't have to, like, be below the ass necessarily. They were just wide. So wide pants is a big one.
Right.
But I think, you know, more than anything, what I love about nu metal is the idea that there was this genre that I believe is a real genre, and we'll get into whether or not people think these bands belong together.
Sure.
That didn't get a cool name like thrash or like hardcore or punk. They were just like, it's nu metal, and you just spelled it like an asshole. Like, it's very strange. But I
Right.
think, you know, there is like a definite sound here, and it's that super low end, you know, the fieldy from Korn bass that's like
Sure.
basically a percussive instrument
Yep.
being sort of a defining part of that band sound.
Yep.
You know, you have the extra string on the guitar tuned down. So it's not just an alternate tuning, it's really this like extra low kind of like gut and like special area rumble that
Ball
you get.
dropping.
It's a ball dropping sound.
Yep.
And then fortunately or unfortunately we do get into a lot of the like DJs, which I think some bands utilized well, others not so much,
Right.
and the hip hop influence that you hear, you know, most predominantly in the Biscuit, but it's definitely a part of Korn sound. It's obviously a part of Linkin Park sound, and you know, to varying degrees, integrated into a lot of these bands.
Big emphasis on groove, of
People
course.
love to groove.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I think a lot of these bands have a lot in common with groove metal bands. You hear that like alternative metal thing, but there is something sort of distinct when you combine those things together and you throw on a jumpsuit
Yep.
that I would argue makes it nu metal.
And the other element that doesn't get talked about quite so much, but I think is very important, you know, we think of metal, we think of big, epic lyrics and imagery from sword and sorcery to, you know, environmental degradation or just gore. I mean, it kind of runs the gamut, but everything has this kind of fantastical and grand kind of feel to it. Here, we're talking about my life.
Yeah, it's personal, man.
Right.
And you know, I think that that's something, again, with a certain generation of people, whatever you think of those people and whatever think pieces you've written about millennials on the internet, you know, when a band like Korn came out, you know, they were singing about, you know, issues in their family. You know, for me, you know, this was a band that had a big anthem all about the Jonathan Davis, the singer of Korn,
Right.
being sort of called and derided as the F word. I'm not gonna say it 'cause it's not my language. But for me, like, that was a part of growing up. Like, that was the way that bullies treated me. And sort of in
Right.
Korn, you know, you hear that and that sort of internalized struggle as opposed to like dragon struggle.
And I think actually, we'll get into this I'm sure a bit later, but I think that's at the heart of why it got derided by a lot of metal fans is because it kind of crosses that line. Metal has not been sort of very subjective or
Yes.
personal in sort of, these are my personal struggles. If you did talk about struggles, it was like translated into the metaphor of like a Viking
Yeah.
challenging a dragon. It wasn't like, my life sucks.
Well, yeah, I don't know how many Iron Maiden songs there are where Bruce Dickinson is just like crying in the booth, and
Right.
you're like, wow, he really is feeling this particular epic historical struggle that he's painting.
It's really
for us.
connecting with Eddie at this
I
moment.
know, yeah, you're like, he's channeling some dark stuff here, but that was very much
Yeah.
a part of. I mean, not
Yeah.
that Limp Bizkit you don't get a lot of crying, but you know, there is like a degree of self-reflection.
Emotion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is intrinsic in almost all of these bands. I would
Cool.
say.
Well, we've laid some groundwork. We got to do that. Is it still 2-0 Indians? Somebody give me
3.
3-0 Indians.
What?
Come on, Jays. Let's go. Pull it together. What we like to do next is establish what we're called the legend. So we want to clearly establish the band
Yes.
that is the band that cannot get
Of course.
voted off the island.
Yeah.
That could not be put anywhere else, and that this would not be this
Yes.
without this band. Who is that band?
I think we can all agree there is no argument here. That band is Kitty, the defining band of nu metal. No, I'm getting binged out on that? Fine, we agree.
Oh, I got caught in headlights
The
there.
defining band, Stuck Mojo, guys. Everyone, okay, fine, it's Korn. We all know it's Korn. There's no point in pretending that this genre exists, has this name, continues to
The
flourish
hate
until
mail
this
is
day.
already rolling in.
I know.
Thanks,
Someone didn't even
Sam Sutherland.
continue to watch after that
Yeah,
point. They
yeah.
were like, he said Kitty.
Korn.
It's Korn.
Yeah.
Korn is the originator of the sound. They remain the flag bearer for this entire genre. They're unbelievably popular to this day, and I would argue still making really interesting and innovative music if you look at the collaborations they've done with Skrillex.
Yep.
Path of Totality was a fairly recent record from them that sort of just took that extreme sort of sub-vibe of their early records to like a new place thanks to collaboration with
And people
electronic
forget,
artists.
94 was the first record. You know, they've been out there for 20 plus years. We interviewed Korn for the new metal episode of Metal Evolution, and here's a clip when I talked to both Jonathan Davis and bassist Fieldy about this term, nu metal.
Nu metal became a very popular term, around that time in the 90s. How did you feel about that label?
I hated it. I mean, I even hated when we were called a metal band. We never considered us a metal band. So what we did was so different. It was just a rock band. Yeah, we have distorted guitars and it's screaming and stuff, but it ain't metal. Metal at that time to me was Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and singing about dragons and swords and shit like that. It wasn't what we were doing. It was something so completely different. But I mean, I can't have my way with everything, so I mean, obviously they're gonna call it something.
You guys got lumped in with what they called a nu metal at the time. Why do you think you guys got categorized in that way?
I think because we were so odd, man. Nobody could come up with what they wanted to call Korn, and that kind of just happened, nu metal, and we battled it for the longest time. And now when people say, they say nu metal, I'm like, I don't care. That's what you want to call it. Whatever, Now that we're older and you look back on it and like, yeah, we are.
So interesting discussion there. You got Jonathan sort of saying, hate the term, don't like the association, what the fuck are we talking about? Then you've got Fieldy sort of saying, who cares? People had to call it something. It is what it is. So it's sort of revealing that there is this sort of thing
There's a
in nu
struggle.
metal where it's like, even the musicians kind of don't like it.
Well, what's interesting to me is how many bands claim that they invented nu metal, but also want to distance themselves from it. You see it a lot, and I would encourage people to rewatch the, quite heinous Metal Evolution episode about nu metal. But like, literally every band is like, nu metal. Like, I wish we didn't invent it, but like, it sucks, but we did it. We invented a genre, guys. Like Tom Morello, Scott Ian kind of comes off pretty well. He like credits a lot. Like he says Faith No More. Like he name checks like the sort of for real predecessors.
For sure.
But like literally every band is like, being in Disturbed, it's so hard having invented nu metal, despite the fact that we are not nu metal. And you're like, God, chill out. But there is like, a lot of these bands are going to be associated with the genre forever, but they have moved on.
Yep.
I think that that's a fair thing to say.
Fair enough. Here we go. What does the board have to say? Let's see what the audience has to say. Weighing in on Korn, we've got Jacob Foster. Korn were definitely the first true nu metal band, 1994, 2 years before Roots. Nicholas Adavaniano is back. Welcome, sir. Korn is the absolute legend. They are pioneers, and they're still the best in the genre. Everything after ripped them off, regardless of whether they did a good job or not. Shark Crusher 13 says Korn started it all and still dominates to this day, keeps putting out interesting stuff, and never stops their evolution. And Zeus Ex Machina says Limp Bizkit is the defining nu metal band. To this day, they still make nu metal. Korn might have been first, but they have changed drastically. What's your thoughts on the Limp Bizkit?
I mean, I think it's a fair argument, but like, I mean, I obviously don't agree. I think Limp Bizkit sort of really forms like the sort of like, they're not quite here, but they're like here, and then everything else sort of falls down below.
Right.
I mean, if you look at the timing on it, the fact of the matter is that Ross Robinson, yeah, there we go. We can just do some movement. And
Work the schematics here.
and then it flows from here. I mean, the fact is that first Korn record, it's 1994. It's Ross Robinson inventing that sound alongside Korn. You know, he was a producer. He ultimately worked on the first Limp Bizkit record. He's worked on, you know, basically every defining album of this genre. Continued to make great records. Sort of worked on At the Drive-In, worked on Blood Brothers, sort of continued to expand. But the sound that he created here really ultimately informed the sound of the first Limp Bizkit record, and then obviously the second record is when they became exceedingly commercial and still rocked. But you know, I just think timing-wise, it's hard to argue it any other way.
Definitely changed the sound, but I think we want to talk a little bit about the new metal fashion. I mean, we started at the beginning talking about gigantic pants, and you know, I think there's this sort of received wisdom within metal that it's like we don't really like to talk about the way we look. That's sort of like it's not really what's most important. But when you really think about it, like new metal was this total left turn.
And yet, I think it is very important. And if you look at, you know, what a lot of early metal bands had to say about metal, it was like, oh, they didn't look metal enough, you know? It was like aesthetically kind of different. And I think it's so interesting that genres that often sort of come out of a reaction against some sort of standard mainstream culture, whether it's punk, whether it's metal, they very quickly develop their own sets of rules. Despite the fact that they may have been sort of in opposition to the very notion of rules to begin with. And I think by the time these bands came around, metal like very much had codes. It had a uniform. It has a fashion sort of template. And then all of a sudden, Korn come out in the tracksuits, and like we're seeing these tracksuits right now.
Purple ones, no less.
Those were so
Sequined.
fresh, and I've had this conversation with many people, like independent of talking about new metal or what, you know, anything like that. Like, think about a time when a band was able to come out with a completely new look and like redefine. Like, forget the sound of it. Like, these were guys ostensibly in a metal band wearing like all Adidas tracksuits, and it was like an aggressive sort of affront to, you know, I think standard metal fashion.
And you know, like it or not, calculate it or not, this broadened the appeal of the music. I mean, here were guys that weren't dressing in tight black jeans, Converse, and a black T-shirt. Like, get out of the '80s. They obviously, you know, reached a whole different fan base.
Well, and I think, you know, there's a telling, you know, aspect to a lot of these bands' origins, which is that they tended to come from cities that were not necessarily metal hotbeds. Korn didn't come from Los Angeles. Limp Bizkit didn't come from, you know, New York.
Birmingham, England.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you have these bands emerging from places where the culture is just going to be different no matter what. You know, Jacksonville, Bakersfield, Sacramento. Like, these are the kinds of places where I think more weirdos come from.
London,
Ontario, the Godfathers.
Yes, Lisa.
I'm buzzing in because I really need to take this jacket off because it's really hot in here.
It's hot in here.
It's super hot in here. So if we're done talking about fashion, I'm going to take this jacket off.
That's a sweet homage, in case everyone didn't notice. Lisa Lattisaur sporting the three stripes, which is a distinguishing look of new metal. We've got a few comments here, I think, on the aesthetic. Daisy St. Patience, nice name. I miss the ridiculous fashion looks, to be honest. Those times were fun. And Joel Harold says, I think thrash had its own fashion as well. And I kind of find that really interesting. It's like, because new metal came out with a totally new look, it kind of revealed the fact, as you were saying, that metal had a look.
It's like, oh,
and it was like, all of a sudden, it was like, oh yeah, right, we do look a certain way.
Well, and the interesting thing is, once again, you know, you have these initial records coming out, and then it very quickly becomes its own sort of defined genre with rules. So if you look at especially the sort of second wave of new metal bands, like the bands that were influenced by Korn and by Limp Bizkit, by the Deftones, those bands all look the same as Korn and Limp Bizkit and the Deftones. They're very quickly, you know, becomes like this sort of general vibe, and either you got dreads or you've got the spiky hair and it's colored, and you know, like everyone does it, guys. Everyone does it. Oh.
No one did the sequined purple track pants.
No.
That was a Jonathan Davis.
That's all my
yes,
boys.
Lisa.
Speaking of one-offs, we need to get several off of this board. We need to get this going and locking some horns.
Yeah, next step, we're going to talk about bands that people feel should not be classified as new metal. And I see there's been a lot of action on the boards about this band, System of a Down. So let's go. Cassidy, Robinson says, I think System of a Down should be off the tree. They started as new metal, but really developed into their own thing, proggish almost. Pedro Andres Hernandez says System never had the sound, the look, or anything associated to nu metal. They never really rapped or used turntables, instead adopting a more straightforward but also frenetic and unique metal style. Very articulate
I
fans
know,
out here.
Pedro.
Alexandro B says System are far too experimental to be considered nu metal. The drumming might be groovy and sort of bouncy, but the riffs don't really have that weight to them, like, for example, Korn. What are your thoughts on System of a Down?
My argument for System of a Down remaining here is sort of similar to Television being considered a punk band. The fact is, this was a brand new genre, and I think more than anything, we could talk about the pants, and we could talk about the down tuning, and we could talk about the pants again, but really this was about sort of breaking free from a lot of the rules that had come to be associated with metal and its various subgenres.
Yep.
And I think in that sense, System of a Down very much belong here, because you can't tell me another band that they kind of sounded like, whereas I think they were able to successfully tour alongside these bands and find an audience that was sort of looking for something different. And they absolutely kind of developed their own thing, and even at the time fully occupied their own space. You know, but really, if you look at the origin of punk, it's like Patti Smith and Television and the Ramones. Now, you listen to those records side by side, they don't sound really at all the same, but they're sort of born out of the same ethos, the same sort of approach to writing new music.
Umlaut.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's a good point. I mean, the flip side of that coin really is, where else do you put them?
Yeah.
You know, they become, I mean, there is an argument for System of a Down. I think on some level I would agree they're a bit of an outlier. No one really truly sounds like System of a Down. But at the risk of not locking horns and being very Canadian about this, I think I would agree System had enough of the hallmarks of the sound and were part of that moment. Bringing the groove back, which I think is a huge factor here.
They are groovy, guys. They're
people
groovy.
forget that metal at that time was largely like very, very fast, or extremely heavy, and so you have a band like System bringing their own approach.
And that like weird melodic thing, like if you listen to sort of Serge's vocals, I'd say they actually do have something in common. Not that I think that he's necessarily influenced by, but if you kind of like listen to the kind of like weird high notes that John, my boy John, J Devil, I believe he goes by now, you know, I think there's a similar approach there, and sort of breaking out from like what you think you can do.
Or we could just get into the conversation about they're just better than everybody else, but we won't do that. That's
not
Brian
surprised
Dowling
there.
says
Not
that
surprised.
System just happened to come out during the nu metal era, and while they shared some similarities with nu metal, their overall song structures, lyrical themes, and aesthetics set them apart. Okay, Cameron Drew, System isn't nu metal. Their only personal song is Lonely Day, and they're way more melodic than other bands. Interesting point, very political band, which we haven't really talked about. Dan Mills, System are in their own league. So in the interest of democracy, we're just going to put them over here.
Under, what's the category?
My father invented the question
We'll come up
mark.
with something later.
In an homage to Austin Dr. Evil there, we got to throw up a question mark.
I will say the political
board.
side of things is interesting, because I always joke about the fact that like no one did, until the Kardashians, no one had done more for awareness of the Armenian genocide than System of a Down. And I sort of wonder if they're like a little bitter about the fact that like,
I think they're bitter about the fact that Kardashian and System was used in the same
Sorry.
sentence. So
Sorry about that.
Good luck sleeping tonight with that one. Yes, Lisa.
This could be the beginning of a new branch for avant-garde metal.
Right.
says some of the people on the chat.
Avant-garde metal.
But right now we're going to leave them in the question mark in the usual Devin Townsend zone. They're this week's Devin Townsend band.
The outliers, the great outliers of metal history. Lisa, where are we going next? We got more bands coming up on the board?
Yeah. I don't think this one will be as controversial. People would like to say goodbye to
people don't love P. Roach?
Papa Roach.
My life falls into pieces. Papa Roach. Cassidy Robinson. Papa Roach is too marginal, and later they tried to go emo when nu metal was over.
That's true.
Nick Ottaviano says Papa Roach isn't a metal band to any degree. I'd feel more comfortable putting Nickelback on this chart, but don't do that either.
Okay, let's add Nickelback. Let's get wild here, guys. I mean,
Papa Roach.
Yeah, look it. I mean, the only thing that I love about Papa Roach is like, what's his name? Jacoby Shaddix? Is that it? Like, Shaddix? Is that his name?
Correct.
Yeah, that guy is just like a psycho, and he entertains the hell out of me. Like just by existing. But yeah, I mean, this is a garbage band.
Yeah.
That came again like as part of like a second wave of just people like straight cashing in.
Yeah.
But like, you know, watering down, I think, what had been sort of more interesting and new. But wait, can we talk briefly about the radio edit of Cut My Life Into Pieces where like every other word is censored. So it's like blank my life into blank. This is my blank blank blank. No blank. Don't give a blank if I blank blank. Like you cannot tell what he's saying. But
Not
seriously,
much of a song after
no,
that.
it wasn't much of a song ever. No.
Interesting point though.
It's,
You know,
it's kind of a jam.
Bit of a sidebar here, but that video. There's something about those videos, and you know, I'm not gonna put Papa Roach, Nirvana in really the same sentence, but Smells Like Teen Spirit. There was a certain sort of something that I think these bands captured. It was sort of an angst. I remember that Papa Roach video. Again, it was like those kids in their bedrooms, right?
So, no, you are comparing it to Smells Like Teen Spirit, like 100%. Guys, this is groundbreaking. P. Roach and Nirvana in the same arena. Thank you, Sam Dunn.
We got Kardashians and sisters.
Yeah, I know.
We've
All the
ruined
best.
everything
All
for
the best.
everyone.
Yeah,
Yes,
sorry.
Lisa.
We do have a few more comments just so that we can really
Yes.
get all the Papa Roach digs
Okay,
in
Metal
before we
Thrashing
okay.
Matt says Papa Roach was huge for this movement
Yeah.
and the scene. I disagree with removing them. All right. Jacob Foster, Papa Roach, just go with what the current trend is.
They really, when this all softened
Ouch.
up and it became like, kind of like that just aggro, emo-y stuff, like that's exactly where they ended up. Like they sounded like these bands because these bands were popular. And then they weren't popular anymore.
And my question would be, name a band that's been influenced by Papa Roach.
Yeah, I think that that's fully, yeah. They're the end of a tree. They're
Well,
like
okay, so, but I'd say where else do you put them? Are we arguing that they don't belong?
Get-
Or are we arguing that they actually are a different style of metal?
I would say that their influence is so negligible, they don't belong on the metal tree.
Oh.
That's what I would think.
I agree with Lisa, not just because she wore a tracksuit. But
You know what?
a tight tracksuit.
We are gonna have a very small tree here, and I'm just gonna
Oh,
put
I don't know about that.
an X.
Yeah,
Because
sorry.
they don't belong.
We've
Sorry,
got to get
Roach.
a bunch of these things off because there's a lot of bands people
I know.
want to talk about.
To,
if you
to me,
believe
like
that.
this band though, like you think about that guy got so many neck tattoos like 10 years after this band was popular, where you're like, buddy, like if you didn't have tattoos when you were in a popular band, and then all of a sudden like every kid was tattooed up to here, and all of a sudden you look like a Hot Topic salesperson, like he's a pose dog.
Clearly, Sam Sutherland loves Papa Roach.
I
The
love,
final
yeah,
word.
noted P.
Next
Roach fan.
band, Stuck Mojo. Here we go. Andrew
Mm-hmm.
McLeod. Stuck Mojo isn't all that significant, and when it came to Coal Chamber, they
Mm-hmm.
had very little influence. Mushroom Head would be a better replacement for Coal Chamber.
Yeah.
Joel Harold is back. Take Stuck Mojo and Kitty off. Not influential enough, and I can't imagine people even remembering Stuck Mojo. Okay, first, Stuck Mojo. You kind of
I
discarded.
already
I think
there,
we know
man.
how you feel.
You know,
about Stuck
the
Mojo.
only argument I would make for them is that they were doing this like, what's it, Pig Walk? What's the record called? Like the good Stuck Mojo record that came out in like 1996 or something.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna be telling me I'm an idiot, but like they're pretty early to this, but they kind of just sound like Suicidal Tendencies.
Should they go in a groove metal chart? Is that where they need to go? I don't know. You tell me.
Does groove
Internet.
metal deserve to be a category? I mean, sounds good, but sounds unwieldy and massive. I mean, what do we classify as groove metal?
Well, Stuck Mojo.
Anything that has a groove in it?
Yeah, Stuck Mojo and Pantera can just hang out together. They'll be fine.
We'll just maybe do a groove metal question mark. Let's see what the board, anyone out there agrees or disagrees. We'll throw some quotations and maybe a bit of a question mark. Is it a thing? Don't know. Lisa?
I'm going to say we need to start adding some bands, or this
Okay.
is going to be longer than a baseball game.
All right.
And I know that you
Speaking of
guys-
which,
We
any
gotta
updates
watch
on
them.
the score. Still 3-0 Indians.
3-0,
Come
I
on,
don't
Jays.
understand.
Let's go.
It's like almost like the Jays aren't the best baseball team ever assembled, guys. 2006 Jays. Couldn't believe it.
Okay. Adding bands.
Yes.
Adding bands.
Sam Sutherland, you're up.
Sam Sutherland.
Okay, so.
So every time
Yes.
we do this show, we like to have a guest choice.
I love to have a choice.
Tell me what that choice is.
Well, I mean, for my money, if you look at tones, you know, a band that came out early enough to have significant influence, and a band that I think has had lasting influence, a band that continues to, again, tour, put out, you know, interesting records to this day. That band, of course, my boys in Slipknot.
Okay, here we go. Slipknot.
Hell
Now-
yeah! It looks good. It looks good on that magnet.
Let's brush that off a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit.
clean that up.
A little dusty. This is going to generate some debate. I'll play the devil's advocate. Slipknot, much more than a new metal band. Slipknot sounds nothing like any of these bands.
So where would you put Slipknot?
We're talking, they have extreme metal elements, which one could argue that basically no one on this chart does. Riffing, vocally, totally not new metal. What do you think?
So counterpoint, a DJ, two guys who literally just play tins, jumpsuits, and masks. I think it's interesting, you know, where people would argue that this band sits, because they obviously do incorporate a lot of different elements, and I think that's part of why they've lasted longer than, you know, even though Limp Bizkit's still putting out records, like this is a band that is relevant, I think, for a lot of people today.
Yeah, for sure.
The fact of the matter is, you put on the first two Slipknot records, and I think for sure they sort of branched out, and there's more death metal influences and a lot of other sort of more extreme stuff that comes to the plate than you have with Limp Bizkit. But those first two records are straight up new metal records. There's that there's scratches instead of guitar solos. You know, there is that super deep, but then also sort of clicky low end sound. The sort of grooving
Lots
of you know, every song is that. I think it's undeniable that they belong as one of the godfathers of this genre.
Okay, Lisa?
We actually have a clip.
Yes, we
so
do.
that we can let people decide for themselves. And then I have a comment for you, Sam.
Okay, so here we go. We're going to go Slipknot. I believe this is from Heavy MTL last year. Here we go. There you go.
Right?
Slipknot live, Heavy MTL in Montreal. I'm just hearing a lot of stuff there that ain't new metal, my friend.
Oh, it was that was insanely new metal. You put that up alongside a heavy Korn part, and that's basically new metal. And I would argue, and I think I'm going to be sort of giving away a little bit of whatever, but we were arguing about this when this happened. When we were playing that clip, the only reason you don't think that this is new metal is because you like them. It's the reason why System of a Down is over here.
Full disclosure, I've been revealed.
Yeah, you don't want to admit that anything on this tree is in your record collection.
It's true.
Yeah.
Can we change topic?
Yeah.
Feeling really awkward right now.
Sorry. Outed. Sam Dunn, self-hating new metal fan. What's up now?
Played the bit of the devil's advocate there. I would agree with you. I think those first couple records, especially, the feel, the look.
Yeah.
Certainly. I mean, they're an odd bunch because they were grabbing a look, through they should be part of the history of shock rock as well. But then again, you do get members. Wes Borland famously had the eyes.
The god, Wes Borland.
The eyes.
And I think again, this comes back to something that the more I thought about this and coming here and talking about this, the more the geography really sort of stuck in my mind. There's a reason that this band came out of Iowa, which they're very into, and obviously have a record called Iowa. But this doesn't happen in LA. This becomes slicker and maybe loses the corny elements of new metal that kind of put them here.
Sure.
And maybe then they're a really nice, shiny shock rock band.
Yeah, I mean, I think Slipknot is a band that transcends. I mean, we could make a case for them being shock rock. We could make a case for them being extreme metal. That debate would go on. But I think at the end of the day, I think the part of me that doesn't think that Slipknot is new metal is the part of me that sees new metal as a particular chapter in time.
Yeah.
And I see Slipknot as a band that's fully transcended that and has been consistently transcending that for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think many of us fall into that mindset that new metal was about that 5-year period, in the late 90s into the early 2000s when everyone
You
had
were bummed
grooves
out
and DJs, right?
Now, but what would you if you were to say that this doesn't exist? What would you say Korn is?
They're definitely new metal, and I guess there's no question that they don't belong anywhere else. But they might be an island because they're the only one.
So System gets an island, P. Roach gets like Poe's Dog Island, and then there's like the Korn I Hate My Dad Island.
I think it was a label coined by a Spin magazine journalist, so I think it hangs in the balance just because of that. Anyway, Lisa.
Our studio is not an island. We have comments from around the world waiting for you.
Here we go. Slipknot. What do people have to say? Can you scroll down? There we go. Michael Montoya. Not having Slipknot on here is like not having Metallica on thrash. They are the kings of the genre. Nu metal is about stepping outside the box and having a really expansive sound. It might be expensive too.
Yeah, he wrote expensive.
I don't think
like,
Ross Robinson's cheap anymore,
No.
but he might have been in '96. Not
Might
sure.
be-
They
might be
have
cheap
always
again,
done
actually.
that from self-titled to .5. It's all new. Slipknot are arguably the biggest, most influential band in the genre. Gnome Alert says Iowa was the best nu metal album of all time and one of the best metal albums of the early 2000s. I think this is really interesting because I think this is revealing there is definitely a huge bunch of metal fans who don't have the same loaded association with nu metal. It's not a dirty word. Nick the Critic, one says, but I'll give you 2 words as to why they are not guitar solos. Good point. Shark Crusher 13, I do see why Slipknot is fitting in this part of the tree, but to me, they are more about the imagery and the shock factor. So more fitting in shock rock. Point taken. We've talked about that. Daniel Merwin, Slipknot needs to be there. You can look at every top 10 nu metal album or band list on Google, because they're the authorities on metal. And Slipknot, first 2 are always on those lists. If that is an influence, what is Slipknot now? I'm giving up. I'm going to go join Google. Alistair Mateus says that they are completely nu metal. Corey scream and rap, the guitar sound full of nu metal groove, and they have DJ Sid Wilson.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the sort of scream and rap side, and obviously there's a complicated argument to get into about nu metal versus rap rock, but that
Good
delivery,
cop, bad cop.
that good cop, bad cop.
Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, the like delivery style, whether it's directly rap, that like like every one of these bands has a song that sounds like that. Like in that,
Can you do all that again?
I can do the whole. Okay, yeah, no, it's too hot in here. I'm breaking out.
Point being, they did it differently.
No, point being, that was exactly the sound of their delivery.
I got lost. I got.
You got mesmerized
I'm
by
mesmerized
my
by
performance.
the rapping talents.
Do you
of
know
Sam
that there's a
Sutherland.
theory that there's actually multiple like members of Slipknot, and like if a member is sick or whatever, they
Right.
just swap them out and a new one goes on
I
tour?
think you've just proven with your rap prowess that you might be one. Bell.
We need to add some bands, guys.
Okay,
It's
some
so
bands.
fun.
Here we
but,
go.
you know.
Seven Dust. Haven't talked about Seven Dust
Yeah.
yet. Daniel Merwin. We gotta include Seven Dust. They were in that late '90s scene and had the groove, grunge, and even R&B influences that many other nu metal bands used. Nick Ottaviano, the ever verbose Nick, says that the one band that 100% needs to be added is Seven Dust. They were one of the best in the genre for sure, has proved to be extremely heavy and violent with their grooves. Their interesting vocal styles gave them a unique sound for sure, and definitely Morgan Rose is one of the best drummers in the genre for sure. They absolutely need to be added. I'm not sure why they weren't included to begin with.
I think they're worth going up there. Like when I sent, so spoiler alert, I made an Apple Music playlist that I guess will be on the Banger Apple Music
That's right.
page of all my personal favorite and you know what I consider to be the crucial nu metal bangers. And when I sent it in here, I was chastised for actually not including Seven Dust on my own list. So knowing that they are a favorite of the experts that call Banger home, I think there's a strong argument to be made there.
Okay, Seven Dust. Not much argument there. If you strongly feel that Seven Dust does not deserve to be on the nu metal chart, speak up and speak loud. Lisa, we got another band. We got anybody else?
Yeah, we got
that
a lot of
people
people
are talking about.
We have a lot of people yelling for Mudvayne.
Okay.
But I haven't seen a really great argument yet.
I think Mudvayne
So
fans are
we need
probably
to talk
pretty
about
good
them.
at yelling.
Yeah, but that's all. They can't form a coherent
Here we go,
thought.
David Hodson. I can barely read you, but I'm trying. Mudvayne needs to be on the board. I will find you.
And kick you.
And this is the comment of the week. And kick you in the nads.
Yeah. Okay.
If those were Z's, not Z's, that'd be better. Nads.
You know, I always
Mudvayne.
associated Mudvayne with like this kind of Johnny-come-lately thing of like I don't know that they have a lasting impact beyond the bands that they themselves were influenced by. It's almost like time just kind of skips around them.
Right.
On a personal level, you know, that didn't strike me as original enough.
Still, the orchestra play says Mudvayne highly influential to the genre, and Nikki Goods Mudvayne, progressive elements during a time of chugging bands, absolutely genius. Plus, they cited King Crimson as influence. I mean, it's true. Mudvayne, interesting. Very groovy. They had a very distinct. There was a certain element of that cold chamber kind of look. There was a darkness.
Yeah.
The aesthetic. You know, Slipknot brought it with the masks. I see a kinship there, but also extremely virtuosic and different time signatures, and the bass player was a maniac.
Yeah.
And I just feel that they were sort of that much more technical.
So this is
than-
again a
than
band that
everything
you
else.
wait. No, now I want them to be on here because it's clearly a band that you like
not.
that you don't want to put on here. Guys,
true.
I would argue that Iron Maiden and Slayer are in fact new metal bands, just to make you sweat. I mean, Slayer actually, I guess, has a new metal album, so that's.
Yeah, we went there.
How does
in
that? How do you
evolution.
deal with that? Like in like just
I
your own-
generally don't.
Yeah. You think about it as often as Kerry King does?
Yeah.
Pretends that he has
I'm now
no
shaking.
idea.
I'm now shaking that
I
you
can
brought
see,
it up.
yeah.
I'm incapable of dealing with that Slayer record.
Got
What,
to
Lisa?
you.
Never forget. But let's move on because
Okay.
people do have some good.
Okay,
comments
here's some more
about
Mudvayne
Okay.
comments. Okay, great. We had Nikki Goods, Jacob Foster, Mudvayne, Rat Screaming, detuned guitars, rare solos. B1GM3 Dahoon says that bass playing in Mudvayne justifies it, really brought an element of technicality to a genre typically very simple. Okay, well, some people are saying that they made it more progressive. So
I mean, the solo thing is a strong argument in my mind. Also, I mean, like that is really a defining aspect of,
Yep.
again, with exceptions, no guitar solos.
Yep, I think you're right. I mean, the occasional guitar solo, yes. However, we could argue that it's not part of the fabric of
No.
the sound. You're not sitting there waiting at minute 3
yeah.
after the second chorus for the ripper to come in.
No,
So
I
I
want to
think
hear the scratching.
this may all come down to solo or no solo. We should
That's-
just regroup. There's a line.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think was it the metalcore episode where there's the same thing? It's like on some level, new metal, and we'll see this in contemporary new metal. Really, the line between new metal and metalcore becomes like very thin, and I think almost a question of semantics. And that, I mean, I think the very first Lockhorns, right, with Liam from Cancer Bats was all about metalcore,
That's right.
and the argument there was basically solo, no solo.
Huge dividing line. Same with like melodic vocal versus guttural vocal.
Yeah.
These lines that really define this music.
I want to talk about this.
Nathan Jones, I think we got one more Mudvayne hiding their identity check, raping check, groove check, down.
Rapping.
Well, there's one P.
Yeah.
Spelling is important.
You
kids.
corrected
It's important.
expensive to expansive. Like, this is a real, like, Ron Burgundy kind of, like, go F
We
yourselves.
got a clock on this show. I got to get through it. I don't have time to spell check. Rapping check. Okay, so Mudvayne I think hangs in the balance. I think we've actually, to be fair to the audience, despite what Smarty Pants Sutherland thinks,
Thank you.
Mudvayne I think
there's been a strong argument.
I think
people are making
the
the point.
majority of people are saying they're part of the tree. There's my Madden arrow.
This is good, yeah. I'm still laughing about your, like, the penis mightier Alex kind of moment
Throw
there.
it to the wide receiver.
Yeah.
Static X. Here we go.
So, yeah.
Cicada Sond is back. I'll never pronounce that correctly. Is it Welsh? We should add Static X because they brought an industrial feel to nu metal. Good point. Derek Judy. Also, I'd say that Static X should be there, even though they had a lot of industrial influence. Rest in peace, Wayne, of course. Static X, you got an opinion?
I had thought about including them here. The question in my mind becomes, Fear Factory, same kind of thing. Obviously, no argument really that in terms of, the tree that they belong under industrial, but like, there are new metal-y vibes there, and Ross
for
Robinson, the god, did work with Fear Factory.
Yep.
So, Static X rides the line between those genres in a way that I think a lot of these bands, all kind of sit between genres. I think they could go there, but we only saw 2 arguments for them. So if other people are feeling Static X, that would sort of sway me.
Well, Metal Thrashing Matt says Static X has far too much of an industrial influence to belong here, much like Orgy. And in fact, I'm looking over at the chart here
we
in
can
the
see it
studio. I'm
from
trying
here.
to find whether or not we put them in.
No, you've got Orgy
There was
up
no
there.
industrial metal on the original chart. That's why we'll have to revisit the Static X issue when in the archive. So Sample Horror says that they were a cheap Ministry Fear Factory clone. No.
Guys,
ouch.
no. Wisconsin Death Trip is a jam. I think we can all agree. You know, I mean, it's tough because if you look at the industrial part of the tree, which we can see it's off in the corner here, you've got Orgy and you've got Rammstein, and I think there are arguments to be made for both those bands as being new metal bands.
Static X is there as well.
Oh, Static X
I
is
think
there.
So yeah.
Okay, so I mean, as long as
Yeah.
Static X is like getting respect from you, I think they could. Personally, I think they could stay in industrial because it's that really like, you know, clinical drum sound.
Sure.
that I think.
Mechanical.
Yeah, you know, and what I love, for example, about the first Limp Bizkit record and less so about later ones, is like that's a gritty, raw record. Like that was really what, in my mind, Ross Robinson did well with these bands, is they sounded like human beings playing. And certainly that's not the case with Static X.
Yeah, good
Not
point.
no disrespect.
Good point. I think
Static X is great.
consensus is Static X staying industrial metal. Lisa.
One more band for you guys to argue about,
Please,
and then we
let's.
actually have some newer bands to talk about.
Okay.
If you can believe that.
Okay.
But what would you do with Soulfly?
Soulfly. Moment of silence. Tough one.
I mean, I think it comes down to what is the first thing that you really think of? You know, Deftones. There is a strong argument to be made, and I, without even looking at the comments, know that it's being made that they're a post-hardcore band. I've made that argument myself.
Right.
The bottom line is, though, this defined them. You know, this movement, this time,
Yeah.
that part of their sound, especially on those first two records, really defines them. And in that way, I think that they belong here. So the question is, Soulfly. There's a lot going on there, but is this the defining part of them?
Yeah. Not so sure. I mean, groove metal, world metal.
Yeah.
They're
To me, like this could
There's something else.
You could call this like family values tour metal, and in that sense, they don't fit here.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Stained fits here.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
Cold Chamber, in my opinion, still fits here.
Yep.
I think, you know, it's almost like we don't want to give Soulfly this, you know, darkness.
He's admitting to the darkness.
Well, I'm just saying from you and like all the heads and stuff. I got no credibility in this space. I got no problem
all the
saying that,
heshers
like,
in the smoking pit are gonna kick your
yeah, exactly. Like I will fight people on the first two Korn and Limp Bizkit records, like still being good.
Yeah,
not in a nostalgic way.
Well, let's hear what the board has to say. I mean, Soulfly, I'm going to put them under the question mark. Mudvayne's a little messy here.
Yeah,
Mudvayne, we
no,
moved in.
it's-
Soulfly and
Yeah.
Sismo down, we're keeping over here. Here we go. Thrash Maniac 99 says, Soulfly for sure. Max wanted to keep the style Sepultura had for roots by forming Soulfly. That's, I think we all know that. Black Wolf Williams said that Soulfly, come on, add Soulfly and Mushroom Head and take out Linkin Park. They're not metal, they are pop rock. Okay. Horacio Chiquito says that Soulfly is groove metal. Okay. And Jason Vegan, Soulfly equals groove metal. Good one, Sam. Yeah, I think, you know, I think this is partly just people think that Soulfly needs to be up here.
I think that's
right?
a
And
fair
they're
argument.
not on the chart. And I
Yeah.
think absolutely Soulfly deserves to be on the chart.
I think if we're gonna add the groovy, you know, subtree, I think they could fit in there.
But then, anyway, let's not open the can.
Soulfly and Stuck
Stuck
Mojo,
Mojo.
like the two favorites.
two-band
of the-
genre.
Yeah. We know that they did a lot of co-headlining tours back in the
That's
day.
right, that's right.
Of course, Max hugely influenced by the music of Stuck Mojo. So glad we're finally
We're not going
acknowledging
to
that
jump
here.
down that rabbit
No.
hole. I think, yeah, we'll see. Yes, Lisa.
We're actually out of time.
No.
Crazy, right?
Wow.
We gotta.
So
That was me. I was gonna get to do the wow.
Craig's gonna give us the game update.
First of all, what's the game update?
I don't-
3-0.
I don't understand.
Blue Jays, what's the inning, Craig?
Bottom of the sixth.
Bottom of the sixth. 3 more innings, boys. Let's go. Let's do this.
So before we wrap up,
Yes, Lisa.
we need to talk about, is new metal dead or
Hmm.
does it continue to exist? Are there new metal bands that
Sam
belong on the
Sutherland.
tree?
Oh, you're on the hot spot here.
I think there absolutely are new metal bands. But I would argue that as a sort of genre experiencing some degree of revitalization, they are not legendary enough.
Or influential, I think, is the litmus test here.
Yeah.
They're bands that have to have had some kind of influence.
Yeah, like, you know, I think it's interesting what a band like Issues is doing with, you know, new metal and R&B, you know, the way that like Limp Bizkit was really
Great name for a new metal band.
And
Issue.
it's extremely like we get it, guys. You know, it's not necessarily for me, but I think it absolutely fits into sort of this lineage of sort of experimentation and genre blending. You know, but what is the legacy of that band going to
Yeah,
look like?
yeah.
You know, I think it's hard to say that a band that's been maybe doing this for 2 years belongs on this hallowed
Yeah.
tree of life. But I'm curious if other people think I'm dumb.
Yeah, I mean, but that raises the point. So there are new bands, in your opinion, that are creating this sound.
Yeah, and I think that, this is where I would disagree with you about the idea of this sort of just describing 5 years.
A moment in time.
I think the issue is it became so commercialized, so popular that it just had to implode.
Right.
Once you get to this first Linkin Park record, which goes like whatever it is, like 80 times Super Diamond, this cannot sustain.
The only
right?
way to go is down.
Yeah, like at that point, it's just, you fall into self-parody. We're waiting on a Limp Bizkit record called Stampede of the Disco Elephants. Like, it's a little much.
Time to move on.
Yeah, but, I think the fact of the matter is there are people like me who grew up listening to this, and this was like the informative music for us.
Right.
And, even when it's not sort of super new metal, contemporary hardcore bands like Harm's Way, you hear that new metal guitar tone because you kind of go back and you're like, some of this is kind of sick. And that low end and that sort of groovy experimentation and that openness to, I think, trying new ideas, we're seeing more of that from a new generation.
Cool. Well, I think we've got some comments on the board here. New bands. We've got Silent Wolf X84 add issues for incorporating R&B vocals, and their DJ is talented as fuck. He can switch from aggressive to smooth, groovy on the fly. Michael Montoya says Immure should be added because they have been holding down this style for over 10 years. Now every band in this new metal revival is doing what Immure has been doing.
He's right, but that band sucks.
Whoa, opinions. Herp Durbistan King, 810. They opened for Korn, Slipknot. They are a highly contentious band who have brought a form of new metal back that is highly original and adds nuance. I don't know this band. Do you know this band?
I'm not familiar.
Okay, time to do our homework. Abraham Talamente says, I think there should be a limit of the bands on the branch. We need to remember that the peak of new metal was when record sales were at the highest. This is a good point we haven't talked about, is when the industry was peaking too. There were too many filler bands to capitalize on the popularity of genre to submit a formula of a band. Epic Games 01, no genre of metal is dead. Case closed.
I mean, Abraham makes a really great point. Like, the peak of the popularity of this genre coincides with the peak of record sales, like, ever.
Yeah.
The music industry was never making more money than when, Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park and these bands were, like, at their most popular.
Yep.
And I think that also sort of, like, leads to the collapse. Like, there's no way you're not going to have a backlash against, like, hearing Nookie for the 10 diamondth time out of the measure diamonds.
Yeah. Well, the seams were bound to burst when you signed so many bands in such a short period of time. Lisa.
The case is almost closed. I have a couple last things to say.
Okay.
We do have a hard alternative chart.
Yes, we do.
On the tree.
We do.
Some people have asked us, where's Rage Against the Machine? Where's Faith No More?
Right.
That's where they are.
Right.
And we will be revisiting that in the weeks to come.
I think that's a great idea.
And for those of you who had said, what up Judgment Night?
Oh my God.
Will you come back for Essential
Yes.
Albums, New Metal?
I just want to talk about the Judgment Night soundtrack, and we'll just rank the songs. Like, obviously, Onyx and Biohazard at the top, and then sort of
We'll
follow
come
from
back. We'll do the 10 most essential new metal albums, and you're going to join me for that?
Hell yes.
Yeah, all right, we'll do that. And we will also do hard alternative because I think we want to talk about the good bands like Faith No More. Daniel McLinden, I think, might be our last comment here. Death Grips are a new wave of new metal. Oh, new genre. The only reason people can't see that is because it is early. Okay, well, maybe time will tell.
It's a man who, like, spends too much time watching Anthony Fantano videos, I think. That's not true, my man. It's not.
Okay, so just before Sam Sutherland alienates the entire Lockhorns.
That's really inside baseball.
They know. They're on YouTube. They know what's up.
We're going to wrap this up. Lisa, you got our comment of the week ready for us?
I think you picked it. It's
Right.
Mr. Nards.
Right.
Mr. Nads. Nads Nards.
Yeah, we're going to
Close.
get kicked in the nets. Anyway, Sam Sutherland, thank you very much.
Thank you so much
Great
for
to
having
see
me.
you.
So great to talk about how great Limp Bizkit is with the world's #1 Limp Bizkit fan.
That's
guys.
right. Full disclosure, I've been outed on new metal.
I know.
Lisa, Daniel, Craig, and Andrew, thank you for everything. The show will be archived for those of you who are watching it live on our Banger TV YouTube page. And remember that those of you who are watching it archived can see it live Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Apple Music. Next week, we're doing our second panel, Metal in Fashion. And it's going to go beyond white dudes with dreads and the 3 stripes on the tracksuits.
Best look.
Rihanna, Bieber, Metallica shirts selling for thousands of dollars. What do we make of all of this in the metal community? Are you comfortable with the fact that metal is really making a big inroad into the mainstream fashion world, or are you all for it? We'll be debating that next week on Lock Horns. Until then, see you next time.
A bit.